who used to be in charge of maintenance for Boston public school buses, is now accused of taking bribes and kickbacks at the expense of city taxpayers.
America, the public school corruption just hit a new low that's going to make your blood boil. Michael Mueller, the man responsible for keeping Boston's 700-plus school buses safe for kids, just got arrested for stealing $870,000 in bribes and kickbacks over 11 years. We're talking about cash payments, a pickup truck, and $85,000 worth of building material for a vacation home in Rhode Island, all while he was supposed to be ensuring that Boston kids had safe transportation to school every day. But here's what's really disgusting. This wasn't just stealing money. This was extorting vendors by threatening to cancel their contracts if they didn't pay him bribes, putting children's safety at risk for personal profit. But here's what nobody's talking about. This is what happens when you have zero accountability in government contracts and taxpayer-funded operations where bureaucrats think they can get away with anything.
Michael Mueller's alleged bribes included cash, checks, building materials for his vacation home.
What is up, guys? Tyson Dela Cruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This story shows why we need to audit every single government contract and hold these corrupt officials accountable for stealing from taxpayers and endangering our children. Let me break down just how extensive this corruption was and how it directly impacted the safety of Boston's school children. Michael Mueller worked for a company that maintained about 700 buses for Boston public schools, and he used his position to extort vendors for over a decade.
Had vendors charge more for their services and then took some of the profit for himself, totaling $870,000.
This wasn't just simple theft. This was a systematic scheme where Mueller forced vendors to inflate their invoices and then kick back part of the money back to him. Think about what this means. Taxpayers were paying inflated prices for school bus maintenance, while this corrupt official pocketed the difference.
Allegedly solicited and accepted more than $870,000 in bribes and kickbacks from 5 vendors between 2010 and the end of 2021.
This means for over 11 years, the person responsible for ensuring Boston school buses were safe and well maintained was more concerned about lining his own pockets than protecting children. The federal complaint reveals that Mueller's job was to ensure that the Boston public school bus fleet is safe, well maintained, and ready for service on a daily basis. Instead, he was running a criminal enterprise that put profit over children's safety. Here's where the story gets even more infuriating. Mueller didn't just ask for bribes. He threatened to cancel vendor contracts if they didn't pay up. This is textbook extortion using child safety as leverage. Think about the position this put vendors in. They had legitimate businesses providing necessary services for school bus safety, but they were being extorted by the very official who was supposed to oversee their work. If they didn't pay bribes, their contracts would be canceled and children's safety would be compromised.
And they say over 11 years, he threatened to cancel their contracts if they didn't pay him bribes worth a total of $870,000.
Mueller had complete authority over these vendors. He could fire them at will. This gave him enormous leverage to demand bribes, and he used that power to systematically steal from taxpayers while potentially compromising the safety of the very children that he was supposed to protect. The vendors were doing essential work, cleaning buses, making repairs, plowing snow for storage yards. These are critical safety functions, and Mueller was using them as his personal ATM machine. Now let's talk about the most brazen part of this corruption scheme. Mueller just didn't take cash. He had one vendor buy 85 grand worth of lumber and building materials for a vacation home he had in Rhode Island. The president of the construction company in Norwood, Massachusetts, bought approximately 85 grand in building materials from a lumber company specifically for Mueller's vacation house in Rhode Island. This wasn't just a bribe. This was using taxpayer-funded contracts to renovate a personal property.
Prosecutors detailing that too, saying the bribes included cash, checks, a used pickup truck worth 15 grand, and $85,000 in building materials.
The federal complaint reveals that Mueller tried to conceal his relationship with the president of the construction company by telling the lumber company that he was his uncle, then even used fake addresses to hide the connection. This shows the level of premeditation and deception involved in this particular scheme. Also allegedly required one vendor to hire his adult child. So not only was he stealing money and materials, he was using his position to get jobs for his family members. This is corruption at every single level. Here's how these criminals showed just how arrogant and stupid they really were. Mueller and his co-conspirators were exchanging text messages about their bribe scheme, creating a perfect paper trail for federal prosecutors. The federal complaint includes text messages between Mueller and Vendor 2 that read something like out of a mob movie. Mueller would text asking, "Did the Eagle land?" When he was waiting for payments, the vendor will respond with details about checks cleared and how much money Mueller was going to get. Mueller was so greedy that he would hound vendors as soon as they received payments, demanding to meet immediately when checks cleared so he can collect his cut. He was treating taxpayer-funded contracts like his personal piggy bank. One text message exchange shows Mueller asking, "What time are we going to meet and where? We can meet at Pike's rest stop if that works. Are you guys going to pay the whole half or half of what you have? I have today off, and if you want to do some shopping or sooner, that would be great." This guy was so brazen that he was planning shopping trips with stolen taxpayer money and arranging to meet on highway rest stops to collect bribes like he's some kind of drug dealer. The corruption gets even worse when you look at how Mueller conspired with vendors to create complete fake invoices for work that never was performed. This wasn't just inflating real costs, this was outright fraud. Mueller conspired with Vendor 3 to invoice the transportation company $189,000 plus for cleaning snow off roofs of school buses, work that was never actually performed. Most of that money went directly to Mueller as a kickback. Mueller also demanded that Vendor 4 pay him 5% kickback on all revenues from the transportation company. Sometimes this vendor paid the kickbacks with checks made out to Mueller's landscaping company in exchange for fake invoices for services that were never actually performed. This shows the level of sophistication of this fraud operation. He was creating fake businesses and fake invoices to launder the stolen money and make it look legitimate. The fact that he was requiring vendors to hire his family members shows this was about more than just money. This was about using his government position to benefit his entire family at the taxpayer expense. Now let's talk about Boston Public Schools' response to this massive corruption scandal. They're trying to claim that they did everything right, but the reality is that they allowed this corruption to continue for over 11 years.
In a statement, BPS says when it became aware of the allegations in 2022, it immediately contacted law enforcement, ensured Mueller's firing, and has fully cooperated with the investigation ever since.
But here's the question: how did this corruption continue for 11 years without anybody noticing?
It says a new bus contract signed in 2023 requires greater transparency and stronger oversight of payments.
That's great, but where was the oversight for the previous 11 years when $870,000 was stolen from taxpayers? This is typical government response. After getting caught in a massive corruption scandal, they promised to do better in the future while taking no responsibility for the systematic failures that allowed this corruption to flourish in the first place. Here's where justice finally catches up with these corrupt officials. Mueller is facing serious federal charges that could put him away for decades, and his co-conspirators are also facing significant prison time. Mueller is charged with 5 counts of soliciting and accepting bribes, 5 counts of conspiracy to commit bribery, 5 counts of conspiracy to commit honest service mail fraud, and 4 counts of extortion. These are serious federal charges that carry significant prison time.
A second man, 60-year-old John Colantoni, was also arrested. He, according to prosecutors, was the president and half owner of a small construction company in Norwood.
The owner of the construction company was arrested in Florida and is being brought back to Boston to face charges. He's charged with paying bribes, conspiracy to commit bribery, conspiracy to commit honest service mail fraud, and obstruction of justice. The obstruction charge is particularly interesting because it suggests that this individual tried to cover up the scheme when investigators started asking questions. This shows these criminals knew exactly what they were doing was wrong. wrong. America, this Boston school corruption scandal represents everything wrong with government contracting and public sector accountability. For 11 years, Michael Mueller used his position overseeing school bus safety to extort vendors, steal taxpayer money, and potentially compromise the safety of Boston's children. The $870,000 in bribes and kickbacks, fake invoices for work never performed, building materials for vacation homes, jobs for family members. This wasn't just corruption. This was a systematic criminal enterprise operating within our public school system. The fact that this continued for over a decade shows the complete lack of oversight and accountability in government operations in Boston. Where was the supervision? How did nobody notice the person responsible for school bus safety was running a criminal operation? Boston public schools can claim they cooperated with the investigation all they want, but they failed in their basic responsibility to protect taxpayer money and ensure children's safety. The new contract requirements for transparency are too little and too late, in my opinion. Mueller and his co-conspirators are facing serious prison time, and they deserve every year that they get. When you steal from taxpayers and potentially endanger children for personal profit, you deserve the full force of federal prosecution. This case should serve as a warning to every government official who thinks they can use their position for personal gain. Federal investigators are watching, and when you get caught stealing from taxpayers, you're going to face real consequences. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.